Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about 28 Days Later from 2002. Danny Boyle's sort of indie zombie movie was ahead of its time for a lot of reasons. And I think part of its release, how it was shot on video, transferred to film, and then put on DVD, is part of why its legacy works out so well. I will talk about that in this, but I also think it is a damn finely made zombie film. Now, I think a part of that is, although this film gets sort of like an indie rep, and I'm not acting like it's made with a huge budget, but it should be reminded that the script was turned in while they're making The Beach, which is a movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio. So they're not exactly like, George Romero when he was making Night of the Living Dead here, to be clear. And I think you can tell that this is a filmmaker who knows what he's doing, as Danny Boyle very much does in this. It kind of reminds me a lot of what we would see from Soderbergh after, where you see him maybe he's doing a riff on certain thing in this one movie, or is taking on a different subject, but you can tell a filmmaker who knows what they're doing and has experience is behind this movie and is smart enough to make this movie. And I think that's honestly why this movie had happened. I mean, he made Trainspotting, he made Shallow Grave, he had made the Beach and A Life Less Ordinary. I guess those were less notable, but he had been around. Like, he was the Trainspotting guy. He was known. That's why I saw this, because he was the Trainspotting guy. You can tell that there's a smart auteur, big name behind it, but I think that's also what makes it special. And I had an interesting viewing of this, because I had not seen this since the early 2000s. I also had not seen this since I met my wife, who's English, and there's a lot of English stuff that I just did not remember at the time. I was like, I guess she got candies, and now I'm like, oh, those are Maltesers. Oh, that's Costa Coffee. Oh, they talk about chocolate oranges and stuff like that. I thought it definitely changed my perspective this watch, and it's kind of interesting seeing this film age as I have, as a film fan and a film student, as I saw this summer before I started film school. Now, this is about a guy named Jim, not me, but okay. Jim, played by Cillian Murphy, who wakes up 28 days after a zombie outbreak, or I guess it's after the zombie outbreak, not after. Was he asleep longer than that or something? Anyway, it was 28 days after the zombie outbreak happened. He wakes up, everybody's gone, London is vacant, in very chilling, amazingly shot scenes. Then he hooks up with Naomi Harris and Brendan Gleeson, and Brendan Gleeson's daughter, and then go on kind of an adventure to kind of find this fortress near Manchester so they can escape the zombie apocalypse in London. Or the infected apocalypse, because they're not technically zombies, as they always do in these things, but they're zombies. We know they're zombies. They don't say they're zombies, and that's artful or something. I don't know. I wanted to talk about a little bit how this is shot on video. Apparently it was shot on video, particular camera that I did not have access to at the time, and probably still wouldn't, but it was done on video and at a faster shutter speed, so they were able to catch things fast. That's why they were able to shoot all these vacant parts of London, particularly the shots where he's in major touristy parts of London and other parts of England. They were able to do, because of the video cameras they had, to do things like Shaun of the Dead. It takes an amazing amount of figuring out and PAs and all this stuff, and although they did that, they're able to do it in 45-minute intervals, which is kind of insane. I think why this film still has sort of, and I hate it when people say, oh, they had an indie spirit and all this stuff, but you really can tell it's a filmmaker who understands how to use a small budget, particularly in the tunnel sequence where you see the zombies chasing after them, or the infected, they're just kind of in shadow the whole time, and you just buy it. And I remember at the end of the sequence, I was like, that's genius, because I don't doubt it at all, but I understand what he's doing. They worked with what they had, the birds being everywhere. Apparently that they couldn't stop birds because you can't hire PA birds or something, so they just had birds everywhere and figured, well, the birds didn't get infected, it's fine. It's interesting how they did that, and they're able to use those locations and use England and use what they had to make the film be what it was. But I also think those empty sequences, it says, although this film is not about capitalism or commercialism necessarily, I think much like the Romero stuff, but I think in a different way, it's sort of this subtle thing of our excess of the advertising of what our society is. When you see it as ruins, it kind of both the emptiness and also kind of a statement on just what our times are in a way, which I found really fascinating. It's really a subtle thing that's just going on throughout it. I don't want to say it's like the third character, that's just Brendan Gleeson, but I hate when people say that. It's like the third character is Brendan Gleeson, not England, but it does like say things about English culture, capitalism in general, like the way he shoots it. It's like the ruins say more about our society than if you had a bustling city of people talking in a lot of ways, and that was really very smart. When I watch those, you see Big Ben, you see an empty Costa Coffee, you see Pepsi machines and stuff like that, and you think like those are our ruins of humanity. It's depressing, it's sad, and it's matter of fact in the way that you don't need to say anything, but it says it to you as a viewer, and it's insanely smart. Like they really use those locations that have meaning and really, like you can tell it's a guy who's directed like 4 or 5 movies before this, because he understands what he's doing in the shot. They had a great DP, all this stuff. My experience with this is kind of different as much as I talk about the cinematography. So I saw this at a theater in Ocean City, Maryland, and I remember we all liked it, but it looked like fucking crap, because back then there wasn't digital projection, and I know Ocean City theaters did not have digital. They didn't have digital projection in the early 2010s, so they ain't got it in 2002. Trust me, digital projection was not a thing then. Now, if you're seeing a movie in a theater, most likely it is digital projection. Because of that, if you shot on video, then you'd have to transfer your video to film, and that is not a transfer that worked out well for the video at all, and it looked like crap. And because it looked like crap, people sort of liked it, but judged it. That was sort of the film thing at the time. What I think helped with this film, and I do think this actually makes a major point in the legacy of any movie, is the home video looked better than the theater, because that was DVD and DVD is digital, and everyone I know who had a cool setup wanted to show off. We're like, hey man, 28 Days Later looks really good on my TV screen. You should rewatch it. And I did rewatch it, and I liked the cinematography a lot more at the time in film school. And it was sort of like this thing that had this sort of arc to it, where like people would rewatch it and like it more than they saw in theaters because it looked better on DVD, actually, which is kind of funny. I don't know if there's much written about this, but I remember so many people discussing it, and I do feel like that helped its legacy, because 2 years out of any movie, sometimes things fall and go out of favor and aren't talked about as much. But because 28 Days Later had got to have this kind of rejuvenation when it was on DVD, the legacy worked. And I honestly do think that sort of helped it be able to make a reboot later, because it had a better reputation, because the goodwill kind of rose instead of, fell or something when people watched it a second time. Like, there's tons of movies I've seen a second time and don't like as much as when I saw it the first time, and this is not one of them. I also noticed a lot of details. One in particular was Brendan Gleeson gets all these fancy whiskeys from this grocery store at one point, and you see him grab 3, and then you see later Christopher Eccleston has those 3 whiskeys after they steal them from him, which I thought was a nice little, I like how they use the cinema. A lot of it's really well shot and really smartly done on video. I think that's one thing that really works about it, because it does have this grimy early 2000s kind of video quality to it, but you have to know how to use the frame, and they definitely do. I like Cillian Murphy and Naomi Harris, and I forgot Brendan Gleeson was in this, by the way, because I hadn't seen this in 20 years or something. And I saw when he took off the mask, I was like, oh, it's him. Oh my God. I thought the first time I saw it was Harry Potter 4 or something, but no, apparently I saw this. I did not know that, because I knew Eccleston, I knew everybody, but for some reason I'm not looking up the Wikipedia of this every time, so I forgot. So that was a nice surprise. I like Christopher Eccleston in this. I do like how grim and shitty it is. Alex Garland was majorly influenced by the Romero stuff, apparently because of playing Resident Evil games and stuff like that. You can tell there's a love for the zombie thing, but wanting to make it its own and make it obviously very English, and I think that works for it. The specificity and the fact that it's doing sort of its own thing. It's not just doing Romero, where it's trying to be, whatever those. I didn't see those Resident Evil movies, but the other stuff. And I also like the the kind of vibe of it. I like Cillian Murphy a lot in this. I like Naomi Harris. It's crazy that like when I first saw this, I didn't know who anyone was, and now other than Brendan Gleeson's daughter, I feel like I know who everyone is. So it's like it is a real arc I've had with this movie. I like Danny Boyle's direction in this. I think Danny Boyle kind of there's certain one of his I really like. He's not every film I'm excited to see and really into, like Yesterday, for example. But for most part, I do enjoy him, and I like to at least check out what he's saying. And most of the interviews lately, he's not been as cringy as you'd expect someone like him to be. And T2 kind of worked out a lot better than you'd expect too. But I did feel like it's a filmmaker who, it kind of reminds me a bit of another film from 2002, Catch Me If You Can, where it feels like a director sort of like, I think after The Beach, which I didn't like, I don't remember liking at all, filmmakers sort of like getting their groove back. And Catch Me If You Can, like Spielberg shot it very quickly and on the fly and stuff, and it helped him, and he makes like this really, it's probably one of his like 2000s movies I really love because it has this energy to it. You can sense that. And this does, and you can tell him going back to his indie roots. What's funny is like, this looks more indie than Trainspotting, and like they ran out of money and had to come up with all these things and stuff like that, even though he had just done like a huge movie. I mean, it bombed, but still. But I love the energy to it. I've never thought of this as like one of my favorite zombie movies, but I think maybe because I watched it too many times in film school, and now I'm like, it is a really solid film. Like, it is probably one of, I know it's always listed in like his best or more known Danny Boyle movies, but it is a very solid film, and I did really enjoy it watching it. I don't think I've seen it since 2004, so this is a fun rewatch for me. I can't say for everyone, but I think it also shows like that it kept the characters small, also that the cast aged in the right way. There's sometimes where you're like, oh yeah, what happened to that guy, but like it's kind of funny to think of it now, and like Cillian Murphy's like, in Oppenheimer and won an Oscar and all these things, as well as Naomi Harris, who was in Moonlight and in Bond and all those things. And originally they were there to be like no names, and that has obviously changed. I also think what they do with the zombie stuff and making it infected and the mad thing and showing like that monologue that one guy gives and he gets killed, that I don't forget the actor's name, but that monologue like stays with me, where he talks about being in the airport and they all tried to get out and everyone had the same idea, and the trampling of everyone and how he saw his parents get killed and all, like kind of showing you the madness of it all. But like they don't show you that. In fact, I think this film, much like great horror does, is they don't explain everything to you. They just show you little bits of it. It's like you don't see, the craziness of London falling apart and England falling apart. You just like, you see the thing with the monkeys at the beginning. He wakes up and like everything's gone, and that's terrifying. That's scarier than knowing how it happened. And it's also scarier that he tells you that, like, that's his impression of it, but like that image has stayed with me, that's a smart image, or her telling you a story, or like them explaining certain things but not showing you necessarily, or I think those moments of this film are very haunting, and like because everyone talks about when he wakes up and what London looks like, but that whole sequence is him realizing what had happened and trying to figure it out. And that's like, if you woke up and everything's gone, I know this is sort of like what brought back zombies basically and brought it into mainstream attention. I think Resident Evil, the video game, deserves a little attention since that influenced this, and then this happened and so forth and so on, but whatever. But I do think it definitely inspired things. I actually never liked The Walking Dead because I watched the first episode and I'm like, isn't this 28 Days Later? And then I fell asleep and I never watched another one. But I do think this is very influential on what would happen with zombies. I think, from Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead to Walking Dead to so many other things, because for a lot of people this is the first zombie film they had seen since the Romero stuff, or maybe they saw this before the Romero stuff. But I think because it's very respectful of what a zombie film should be because of Romero, not that you have to do what he did all the time, but I think they understood what worked about him. And I think Alex Garland, I'm not the biggest fan of his necessarily, but I think this worked in its small indie thing, and it shows a country that I know. Well, I mean, I've been to England twice since in my life, but it feels like it captures the vibe of England and stuff. I'm not an expert. but it feels like they capture it. And I think the way he was able to capture society and a fallen society with these people just trying to survive in it, with you just suddenly thrown in it, I think is really cool. And I mean, hey, that's what works about like Luke Skywalker to John Connor. They're just thrown in it and you have to explain it to them. It's a perfect narrative device, and it works well in a zombie film as well. And I think, you don't see everything in Night of the Living Dead, you don't see everything in Dawn of the Dead, but I think just the sudden you're just in it vibe to it like makes it feel sad and depressing, and realizing like you woke up into a different page of history, whether you like it or not. Obviously that's a bigger ramifications, because this is obviously they filmed this during 9/11. I know we all talk about Master of Disguise, and they filmed this during when the attacks happened. I'm not sure. I'd actually be curious which day that happened on set, but or if it wasn't, maybe they had the day after something. But like, I find that really fascinating, because this is like, if you're talking about post 9/11 cinema, I do think this like plays into that, and the video quality, because at the time like terrorist acts were caught on video like this, that like this movie is, and I think that like added to the reality to it, or added to the scariness of it. Like, we hadn't seen like a major video thing. This is 2 years before Collateral. This is probably the biggest shot on video thing most audiences had seen in a theater that was a studio released film, and I think that really made a difference. I think that added to the quality because it felt so different about it. But I think that difference works for the vibe for it. It probably looks more indie than it would if you actually shot it on film. It wouldn't have looked like that, and I think that was like a smart decision. It's honestly like purposefully made that way, and I find that to be much more fascinating as a filmmaker if you're able to use your tools to give your film a certain vibe, and that is insanely smart. I did like this movie a lot more. I do appreciate this movie a lot more. I do love how this has grown in estimation over time, but it's a smart, well-made genre film, and if you are able to really direct the hell out of a good genre film, you get some really precise kind of filmmaking, and I think that's absolutely what Danny Boyle did. He had to make a lot of sacrifices. They ran out of money, all this stuff, but it has an energy to it that kind of like gets you in, and you're like in it and everything. I don't know if this is the best zombie movie. I don't know, if it really deserves the influence that maybe it's given, and maybe Resident Evil and other things deserve that as well. But I do think like a tight zombie film is a very rewatchable thing, and I think that definitely helps this kind of a movie, because the more times I've rewatched it, the more times I like it, and you can't say that about a lot of movies all these years later. So if you have seen 28 Days Later and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments, and subscribe if you would like to.